Well, do you want the good news or the bad news? The good news is that what I showed in my video yesterday, I've actually changed my mind again. Yes, it's true. It's ridiculous, but here we are. Here's why. I had forgotten something kind of significant, which is that OpenToonz will render any preview range at any time very, very fast, very quickly, by hitting, instead of hitting Alt-R to render out, do a quick render to a MP4, which is kind of what I was doing there for a while. If you actually hit Control-R, you get a high quality preview, and it renders like really fast. Why it's faster than a standard render, I have no idea. So let's take this range of about 2 seconds, and I hit Control-R, and there it is. It's done. Well, it turns out that if you just hit the little save button, whatever extension you give it, it will respect. Meaning that if I give it a file name MP4, it's going to save an MP4, and it does exactly what you would want it to do. Which means that going back to this previous methodology of saying, hey, let's keep everything, as an animatic here in the in a single X sheet, and then take each of those shots, save it as a sub X sheet, and then at any time I can just get down into this and animate it, tweak it, blah, 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 blah. There's actually, I think, another, there's kind of another inherent benefit to this, which is that these output settings, once I set them, they're preserved for the whole, all the sub X sheets and everything, I'm pretty sure. So what I've been doing is I've been doing 1280 by 720 at 80 DPI, and that seems to be a nice nice setting. And kill that. So let's go down into this sub X sheet, and if we go Control O, okay, I'm wrong. The camera, okay, because the output settings are actually based on the camera, okay? And I guess technically each camera is unique to its own sub X sheet. So there's a few things about the workflow that are suggested by this, okay? Number one, set your camera settings as early as possible so that when you add new levels or new sub X sheets or whatever, OpenToonz assumes you want to keep using that same setting, because otherwise you're going to have to go into a bunch of sub X sheets or whatever and change the settings. The good news is I don't have to keep changing my file settings, for the simple reason that if I wanted to render this out, I could just select these two frames right here, just hit Control-R, and then I just save it. End of story. It's pretty brain dead, and everything's really fast. It's intuitive, and I can change my output range. Instead of having to go into the output settings and punch in a bunch of numbers, I can just go like this. Problem solved. Okay, so that's good. So at this point, I only have one regret. And my one regret is that I wish I had done the animatic, which is I guess it'd be this frame right here, or this sequence, this level. If I had it to do over again, I would not do ink and paint and backgrounds in the same level. Again, as I kind of mentioned previously, my intent was to build out in the sense of just letting this one X sheet get bigger and bigger and bigger with all the in-betweens and secondary animation and everything else. But, the reality is it gets really cumbersome really fast if you do it that way. So if I had it to do over again, I would not do any of the shadows, ink and paint, or anything in this main X sheet. I would only do this, the animatic, which you can't really see here until I turn a bunch of things off. And then you still won't be able to see it because I made the main color white instead of black. But if we go, let's see, I think we need to change this, change both of these to black probably. Did that do the trick? Okay, yeah, it looks like, yeah, this level is nothing but the dialogue, which is fine. So my animatic, I'm not actually sure about it. I think what I did was, it's like I'm having to remember now, but I think what I did was I went ahead and did ink and paint, effectively replacing the initial drawings, which is fine. Yeah, if I had it to do over again, I would do all of my animatic / storyboard, whatever you want to call it, basic animation, main keyframe animation in a single level as a pencil test, and then I would immediately just start taking these cells one by one, dragging them over into another column and making it a Subx sheet. So now you've got a long sequence of Subx sheets. You can effectively go into each one of them, and each one contains all these other layers that comprise everything else you need to have, like the backgrounds and the plastic tool and the ink and the paint and the blah blah blah. So that's where we're at today. So if we go to Blender, where we've been editing, another lesson that is jumping out is that what you really want to okay, how do I put this? The reason I'm not trying to do any sort of editing within OpenToonz, in other words, really nail down the sequence and just cut everything here, repeat certain sequences, and basically tell the story all in OpenToonz. The reason is because, number one, it's just cumbersome because you have a lot of levels that you always have to you need to manage as a group, like so. So that alone is cumbersome. But the other thing is, you got to realize that, and I've seen this with every movie I've ever edited, it always happens, is that once you get to the edit stage, you're kind of putting on a different hat. Your editor hat and your animator hat are kind of two different guys. And what happens is you get in here and it always changes. And we see it right here. This shot was not supposed to be here, okay? This was actually supposed to be this shot. Okay, this shot was supposed to be this shot. They were supposed to be reversed, and it introduced a continuity problem because you had two shots in a row of Akari that weren't quite the same, and so it was a little jolting compared to a completely different point of view like you have here. And this just tells the story better. I'm like, when she launches into this line, why have you so rudely, blah, 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 climb through my window, to have her waving the sword makes more sense than to be going to this shot. Okay, actually, I'm sorry, it was actually this one I was talking about. And so the continuity problem we were talking about was going from this to this, because that's the ordering. From here to here was actually supposed to be from this shot to this shot. Okay? And so, and frankly, this shot probably is going to get redone. I don't think I drew her very well in that particular shot, and be easy to switch it out. And in practice, what might you do? You might just go. I'm gonna save my work so that I don't sort of commit to this, but you could go. And this sort of stuff happens all the time. Whoops. Oh, come on. If you touch the next clip, it jumps to after. See? Now, I don't personally like that as well, but, as likely as not, it would have turned out to actually feel better. And that's what happens all the time. So you got to realize that your shots are going to get rearranged. So having them compiled into a single video file makes it a lot easier. So basically what we're finding is at the editing stage, we want it to be like editing a movie where you just have a folder full of individual shots, and now understand that at this editing stage, this is a creative process too, and things will change. Now, having said that, where are we at? Well, this shot is fine except for the fact that we actually don't want her arm to keep going constantly. Now, there's a solution for that, which would be, I believe what I could do, hang on, Blender's reacting to my spastic motions. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here and stretch this out. Now, what Blender does, conveniently enough, is when you get to the end of the clip, it does a hold on the last frame, which is really convenient. Because that means I can take this clip, let's just take this one out and not fiddle with it. Okay, and duplicate this down here. Okay, so that would be a solution except for the fact that the way her mouth is moving doesn't quite match the way her arm is moving. So for that reason, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and re-edit and render this particular shot. I'm hitting undo like a quadzillion times right now just to get it back to this. So, alright, so there's that. So how do we do that? Well, okay, let's get cracking. First thing we need to do is, and by the way, I think I changed my output settings to be the correct DPI and everything here. Okay, so that's fine. Okay. So actually, this would appear to be the shot we're talking about. Okay, so now the problem is that this is one of the shots that I had earlier done as a standalone Toonz file. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at my other screen, and I'm going into the correct folder with all my scenes, which is here. Which I've actually taken a bunch of the individual, I know this is so stupid, but I've taken a bunch of these individual scene files and I've kind of thrown them in a temporary folder. I'm calling the trash bin. I'm not deleting them. You never know why you might want to get back to it. But what I'm seeing here is that what I'm going to do is go ahead and repurpose this scene and preserve the work that I did earlier. Here's how I'm going to do it. I can see here that this is, I believe this is shot number 30, 0030. Okay? So being that it's shot 30, I'm going to assume that it is, and I'm going to drag the Toonz file for shot 30 into here. And I'm going to say go ahead and import it so it effectively makes a copy of it. And apply the current scene camera to the Subxsheet. Okay, so now what do we have? Okay, so now we have it. Alright, and actually the truth of the matter is I can delete all this, and then let's explode this Subxsheet. And what I've effectively done is I've taken this shot and recaptured everything that I did before editing wise, and that means that shot 0030, since I did I imported it, I think it's effectively duplicated. So I'm going to throw this in the trash bin. Okay, so now that 0030.toonz is now hidden from OpenToonz if it were to try to find it again vis-a-vis the load menu. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save all, and I'm going to actually reopen this shot, the battle. Okay, and just see if what I did worked. And it did. Okay, cool. So now I've got to edit the mouth and the arms separately. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, what we want to do is, first of all, we're going from 140. This is kind of embarrassing. I should know this, but what Blender is showing me here is minutes, and what I really want is frames. Maybe if I actually go down here. Yeah, let's do it this way. Okay, yeah. Okay, that makes a little more sense. So now I'm going to go down here. What I'm wanting to do is see exactly how many frames this shot was, so I can just duplicate it. So we're going to go from, well, coincidentally 2400 or close to it to 2540. So it's 140 frames. Let's go back here and see what we got. 72. So what I want to do is drag this down, which is kind of dumb because I know there's going to be some changes in the mouth and the arm. But let's go ahead and just kind of get it to about the length we're going to want it. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, up to here. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's go to here and let's put in a memo. We'll call it end, and we'll post it. And what that does is just gives me a visual reference for where the shot is supposed to end. So I'll just stick that there so I remember. Okay, so now looking at this, this is roughly obviously broken into thirds. We've got 140 frames, so 140, you know, we're talking about roughly 40 to 50 frames per component. So that's fine. I'm going to just basically take, and it looks like I may have already sort of gotten that here. Okay, yes. Okay. Yeah, so exactly as I suspected. You know, I'm kind of getting notorious here, I think, for doing things and then undoing them. But what I want to do is I want to go about, I'd say, a quarter of the way, so around 30 frames of her waving her arm like that. So let's go to, well, let's do 36 just for kicks and giggles. Now this, that's her, and the shadows are important. So what we need to do is let's go ahead and kill this range here, and hopefully this will just stretch out and not repeat. Okay, so that's good. Okay. All right. Now the mouth. Okay, right there, there's a blah, 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 blah. I guess it is going pretty much non-stop. So, Akari, your mouth goes non-stop, girl. Okay, so I'm going to stop that just a little earlier and then reintroduce it. And then I'm going to grab this, hit Control C, and I think what we'll do is we'll drag this down to about here. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen, but that's okay. We'll just drag this over here. Let's stretch these babies down. Let's see where we end up. Okay, we're pretty much close enough for rock and roll. So we're going to put that there. And now, for lack of a better idea, I'm actually just going to duplicate this and guess. We have some strange latitude with this stuff because it's written in English, it's going to be translated to Japanese, and, you know, in keeping with anime convention, the truth of the matter is that the lip sync in most anime is not that good. Okay, they don't use really good mouth shapes, and so we're not going to kill ourselves with perfect mouth shapes. What we're really more interested in is the feel. Does it feel right? So let's go ahead and roll this baby. That feels good. I mean, so now I'm getting back to what I was talking about earlier with rendering. I'm just going to hit Control R. It's going to render the whole thing. And now I can take and just save it in the render folder as an MP4. Now we want to save it as MP4 number 30. Boom. Save that, overwrite it. Okay, that's interesting. I've never seen that. Okay, let's just call it temp.mp4. So, we're learning as we go. So now it's going to go ahead and save the previewed frames. And then what I'm going to do is go back into this folder here. Well, actually, no. Let's open up a new window. Or go to L anime render. Where are you? Okay. In this my image viewer. Okay. So we want to delete this. Actually, it won't let me because Blender's got it open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, save this, and let's just create a new startup Blender file so that the video files aren't being held open by Blender. Okay, so now we can go ahead and delete this. And we should have temp. And let's rename that what we wanted, which is 0030.mp4. And now we can go back to Blender, open the video edit, and we see that, okay, surprisingly, this actually, even though it's broken into 3 pieces, actually came out pretty close. But I'm gonna honor my initial intent, and let's just redrag this back in. Okay, so now we're gonna grab this, draggy poo into Blender, and let's see what we get. Okay, and let's just line that up, because remember what we're doing here is we're covering this shot. And just to be specific about it, we'll go ahead and do this. Okay, the only thing I would object to is, and this is again a great example of what I'm talking about. Split this, hit the K key, I'm going to split that again. I'm going to take this piece, I'm not going to cut it out, I'm just going to drag it out of the way at the moment. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, the basic rub is it's just faster to fix it up in Blender as a video edit. And I think this will be okay. Yeah, let's give that a shot. Okay. Now, Blender's a little funny about moving things around or replacing them, so I'm going to reopen the video edit and see if it plays back a little smoother. Okay. Yeah, the only thing I would say here is this isn't really working. Let's get rid of that, and let's just take advantage of the fact that this will, I believe, do a hold. It actually didn't need to do a hold because through this whole section right here, her mouth happened to be shut, so that's good. Okay, let's do the hold thing. Yeah, climb through my window. I have to say, the fact that Blender does a hold like that is really useful. Okay, so I like it. I think it feels pretty good. So let's just back up a little bit here. Something wacky here. I don't know why this is so long. That's strange. Something got changed. And this shot is supposed to be like more like that. Okay, so now what we need to do is a little bit of color correction. So let's take this and we'll add a curves modifier. And we just want to get, typically I've been seeing the flesh tones in the 0.6 range. So this is, if you look right here, you can see that Blender's telling me what the, I'm sorry, it's actually here. Look at the value, and the value is 0.96. So we really need to chop about a third of this off. So it should be about there. Should be pretty close, yeah. And then what I've been doing is just pushing the blue a little bit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these, but make sure this one's selected so that I can see this, and we're going to copy this to the selected strips. And this should, and it doesn't seem to be doing it. So I noticed this before, and see, it's all blinky. I'm not sure what's going on there. If we select the strips, it appears that they do have a curves modifier, but it does not look to me like the, well, wait a minute, let me double check here. It doesn't look to me like the settings were preserved. So oh wait, yes it does. Yes it does. Okay. Okay, so why aren't we seeing it is the question. And I think the reason is it's got something to do with the memory cache of what Blender remembers. So I'm just going to reload the video file, and I'll bet you now it's going to look right. Yep, look at that. So, okay. So that's about 30 minutes. I'm going to do some more here in a little bit, but I'm going to take a break. And we're just going to continue doing more of the same. Because from now on, we're going to be hammering through each of these shots and turning them into stuff we can actually cut into the show. So feel pretty good about where we're at and where we are headed.